That's really cool. I haven't seen that before. Look at that. That's the thumbnail right there. That's crazy. It's like it all blurs together when you look at it, but there's like a path through there and like a tower and there's like woods and like eyes and everything. Super cool. Oh, kind of cool. Sunflowers. Check out the other side. Oh, it's that. That one's pretty cool too.
So what you're saying?
And I seen the guy who gave the speech earlier there, who's doing the open carry and doing security here. He was in the middle of a conversation though, so I didn't want to bug him. I'll bug him later. I like talking to people. I want to buy some art. Guy to my right, selling art. But I'm not going to film that because that's art gallery rules. These barriers are all starting to get cool. I've seen like random people tripping on those speed bumps. Oh, it's getting ready for something. Oh yeah, that one's getting primered in gray. Pooch. Who's that from? I don't know. It's up on the roof. Oh yeah. On the roof there.
Tighten the strap up a little bit.
The barriers are less useful for art with the tops removed, but it seemed like the tops got removed so they could kind of cordon off the street a little bit. These things are annoying. I just see people tripping on these all day. It's supposed to be speed bumps for cars. I guess they were just doing what they could do quick, but whoa, what's going on here? During wine. Nice. I don't need any more of that right now. Oh, right. That looks new right there. Who was there earlier or not? Oh, this one's new. Old white guys against racism. I'm an old white guy.
It's not a good look. And the thing is, it's not him, it's all
It's like an addition to this thing, man. This one's really cool. It's hard to think about, but then it's got this up on there. The true mirror is transparent. That's weird. I'm trying to think about that. More combination of identities. Black trans lives. Black and trans are the identities. And these are the people by some story. People can feel free to like Google the names, find the stories. Oh, this is an interesting one. I didn't see this here. Oh wow, okay. There's so much art going on here right now. George Floyd and Che Guevara. Che Guevara being the guy who almost led the world to the brink of nuclear war. Yeah, but I think that's it. Yeah.
We should play some pool over there.
What was that? I don't know.
Do you want to play a game of pool?
I'm good right now.
Hey, you're famous, man. I saw you on Fox News.
Don't tell anybody, fuck.
Sorry, but
Snitch.
ah.
Fucking snitch.
Yes,
This guy. What the hell? How the fuck is that?
Oh, it's a gimbal. So it
Holy crap.
I don't know how it works, but it stabilizes everything, so you move it around, and it like keeps stable.
I made $1 in 2 days.
And the
Okay, is it Autobot or Decepticon?
I know somebody that's.
I don't understand the question, but
Is it an Autobot or is it a Decepticon? It's a
No, it's not.
I'm actually not sure.
old people.
No, I know what you're talking about. I just don't know the answer.
You've seen Transformers, right?
Yeah.
Is it a good robot or a bad
Oh,
robot?
it's a good robot.
Okay.
It was a transformer.
Damn.
I got you. Sorry, I'm a little slow because I'm a little drunk.
Whose fault is that?
That's my fault completely, 100%. It's totally my fault.
How was he famous? Was he on an interview on Fox News?
Oh yeah, he was. If you search for, I don't know, there's this 1 minute clip like Tucker Carlson, CHAZ, and they did this crazy like mix mash with like creepy music and like trying to portray this as some crazy event. And he was on there like swinging sticks or something like that. So, but if you look at, I mean, it's after looking at what's here. If you look at that, it's a total joke.
Yeah. Well, some of that was fake, I think, right? They doctored something.
Oh yeah. Well, that's weird because they tried to convey something which was actually here, which is the open carry thing. But they displayed a picture of a guy at like one of the borders who was like open carrying, and it was like a Photoshop thing. But there's tons of people here open carrying, which is perfectly legal.
Yeah.
So it's like now people think the reality's fake because they used a fake picture to portray the reality. It's like,
Oh my god.
I mean, it's like their stereotype is fake news, but it's like they had real news to report and they use fake news instead. And now it's like people don't understand the, I don't know.
That's so
Sensing
confusing.
the problem.
Yeah. This is tripping me out though. This right here. You too. Hey, what's up? I heard the sound, but I didn't comprehend the word.
Are you a journalist?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm filming a lot of things and putting it on YouTube. But
Citizen journalism is a thing.
yeah.
That's what I follow. I mean,
Yeah, I just started like filming it when there were the initial protests. I missed those, and then the rioters sort of fucked that up. I filmed the rioters, and then I started filming after that. Transitioned back into the protests, and then into CHAZ, and then into CHOP.
right.
And then I've just been like filming that, and I've been posting everything up in a fairly unedited form. I just like, I pause, and then that's my edit point, and I determine what files I want to throw away.
Gotcha.
And what files I want to throw away are usually determined by like, there are some people who have like mental health things. Like that guy, I filmed him before, but I just like deleted the file because it's like it's not interesting to anyone. But that was actually funny, I think.
Which one? One of the
I don't know.
the Jesus Christ superstar?
I don't know. I'm gonna wait till I'm sober to have the judgment to
Gotcha.
determine what files are actually useful to people. And yeah.
Yeah, the closest I came to an interview, and I don't participate with the media in any way, but there were some people from Russia here earlier, and for some reason they just sucked me in that they appeared to be, but they were probably some sort of state-run, because Russia has few not state-run media outlets, but still they were here to get our perspective, and I have been following the stuff with Crimea and the separatists and all that for years.
I don't know what that is. Crimea and separatists. I haven't heard those terms
Crimea
before.
Is, what is it? The part of Ukraine that Russia just like that whole thing.
Oh, okay, because they got like natural gas or something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
And,
I heard about that.
And a seaport on what would be the east side of Russia. And Russia has
so ability to
seaports over the Atlantic, but nothing in the Pacific. And Crimea, that
see.
area of the Pacific is highly important to Russia in their military, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. We got our own weird stuff like that too.
We do, and China's been that whole thing with creating islands to claim the China Sea. That's been crazy too. I mean, that's going to be a focal point for serious conflicts. I mean, when they're claiming an international waterway as China, that becomes an issue.
Well, by international waterway, it pretty much means our waterway, because like we spend 1/3 of our tax dollars on military, which includes aircraft carriers and submarines carrying large amounts of nuclear weapons, which can be delivered anywhere within minutes.
But it's all about commerce. I mean, the South China Sea is like probably the most, next to Saudi Arabia and
almost
the
sit down.
Arabian Peninsula. It's like one of the most important waterways in the world. And to control it is to control world commerce.
Yeah. There's this kind of economic and material view of the world, but I think it's actually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Like I heard this one thing about World War II. I'm probably going to mess up the statistic, but it was something like we didn't want to get into World War II because we had this sour taste in our mouth from World War I, but our economic output for 1 week was equal to Germany's economic output for an entire year. So it was just like being involved was going to end that, but it took the willingness to do it, and it took the catalyzing event, which was Pearl Harbor and all that. But really, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor because they knew we were going to interfere with their taking control of oil resources, which they needed for their military machine.
That must have been, what is that, what's the other country in that area? There was, what's the country that they took over?
I mean, Japan was like just taking over China, and that's why they're all uneasy to this day because of that history. Because there's people like really old people now that are still alive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Philippines is weird.
Well, that was what China or Japan. That was where the line is, isn't it? Where Japan had, encroached, and America's power was in the Pacific, and so the Philippines is where it came to a head. I mean, that's where some of the biggest battles were. The Chinese American or Japanese American battles on those islands. Those are Philippine islands, weren't they?
And that's so trippy what we did with the Japanese during World War II. Like, they had internment camps. I mean, I guess you could call it that, but you could also call it like a concentration camp, because that's what it was. Like, we didn't do the action that like the Nazis did, but like we were certainly taking a step in that direction.
Well, a lot of people are really offended by the way we house the German POWs and the way the German POWs house our people. I mean, they were here in the United States going to bowling alleys and working jobs.
I mean, we had a Nazi-run NASA, right? Wernhner von Braun.
Yeah. But he was a big deal. I mean,
that guy was pretty special.
He was a big deal. And wasn't he Jewish?
I'm not sure. I mean, that guy just wanted to get to other planets.
Yeah.
So he was just like, he happened to be a Nazi because he was born there or something,
Right.
and that was just
But
like
his rocketry was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, his rocketry changed the world.
There's the stories though about like them hanging like the 5 slowest workers in the front of the factory as inspiration to the Jewish workers though, which kind of freaks people out. But it's hard to connect like a high level guy with that, with those. It's disturbing to say, but
Well,
those lower level
But
events.
we do.
Yes,
They
we
are.
do.
You know,
Yeah.
I had that same conversation about the Desert Fox. What was his name? Rommel.
Oh yeah.
Rommel was from a distinguished and old German family. He was considered German aristocrat. Is that yeah? He
Yeah,
was,
that's the word
he had
for like
aristocratic family. Or,
old money, old power.
yeah, and so
yeah.
they're trying to separate Rommel from Nazism, and even though at the end of Rommel's life he was implicated in a plot against Hitler, he can't be separated from Nazism. He was a fucking Nazi, you know. And
One
maybe,
perspective I've got though is that all of us have that in us, like that potential. Like there's nothing special about like our hardware or the hardware of specific people which makes them capable. So that's all like software.
right?
So like
yeah.
we're all capable of doing that.
yeah.
That's a little weird. It's like hard to accept.
Well, that's what. No, I've been quoting Buttigieg. I mean, I loved his comment when he's, you know, and supporting. What I'm getting at is supporting women, because Buttigieg goes, well, you know, we gotta support women because, like, if you put a group of men in a room and tell them to solve a problem, they will start a war. Right?
Yeah, there's something about that. Like I've observed that because teams, like there's been this long history, especially in like engineering. Because I'm kind of like engineer person, of like all male teams, and adding a woman to the group just changes the dynamic and enables like ideas to be expressed from people who are not necessarily as forceful in their expressing them.
Right. Yeah. I like how ideas tie together, because as you were speaking, I was thinking of the Mandela, Nelson Mandela quote, who was, I think it was Toni Morrison that actually wrote it, but something like, who am I to be beautiful, talented, fabulous? And the question is, who are you not to be? And that's kind of where it's like you were just saying, you know, when a woman is added, then others whose voices may not have been heard will shine forth. And that's the thing. It's like we need those quieter, less forceful voices to be brought forward and heard. I mean, we do.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like I have been getting behind the notion of, you know, for young people and women in leadership, I think that is going to be, you know, a huge factor going forward, because I can teach you how to tear something down. Can you teach me how to build, right? It's kind of the thing. I mean, I'm actually really good at tearing shit up.
This kind of diversity is interesting in workplaces. I feel like there is a type of job which needs a special consideration in regards to this issue, which is the job of police officer. I think needs very special consideration in terms of like representing the community that's policed.
But from its inception, I mean, you have to go back and do a complete, just cultural, like, it has to be a huge cultural shift, and that shift has to come from within the police community itself. I mean, you can make laws, but you can't legislate morality.
Yeah, they're trying real hard to figure it out now, because this is like
police force. Seattle police force is like one of the most amazing I've ever seen. They are.
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah, well, I appreciate their less, and they probably had to get to that point because I've been hearing about some shootings. I'm not from Seattle, but I've been hearing about some shootings that they were responsible for. So like killing a mother, pregnant mother, and stuff like that. And I hadn't heard that stuff before.
What I have trouble getting my head around is the fact that there are like 10 million police encounters roughly per year, and then some percentage of those have like resisting arrest, and in all those situations it's like the police get called to go into a situation where they don't understand the context and they don't know like the people involved. And that, I mean, that just seems like a recipe to create events and outliers, and then it's hard to understand the proportionality of that and understand the police as a whole as a result of that, because I honestly feel like there's an oversimplification in people's perception of the police. They call it systemic racism and say, therefore, all police are bad. But I really believe that if there are 10 million police encounters per year, certainly some of those situations are situations where the police need to be there. Like, I've personally observed those situations where the police needed to be there.
Absolutely.
So now we have like medics here that are filling those functions, and it's actually sort of interesting. Like, one thing I've observed here is the no filming, which to me seems like sort of an asymmetry, because one of the early demands from the protesters was that police have their body cams on all the time.
Yeah.
And now, whenever something bad happens, people scream, no filming. And I mean, I think part of that is definitely that the medics here, they aren't recognized as having qualified immunity because they're not acting in like a sponsored capacity from the government as law enforcers, although they're doing that.
Well, there's medics and there's the security team. There's two different aspects here.
They seem like they're mixing, because it seems like some of the medics are also security now, which is like interesting.
Well, but I had an encounter with their security team that was violent, right? And and then those people who were involved, I haven't seen those people since. So there were people who were wanting to serve, but didn't have the skill. I call it the unskilled help, where they have good intentions, but you know, they don't have any kind of training in de-escalation, any kind of training, and you know, and inside themselves they don't carry a large level of empathy for other humans, or it's violence.
That's the thing.
It's violence.
We don't have a good selection process by which we determine who should or should not be a medic.
Yeah.
But then also the police don't have a very good selection process because it's known that they're undertrained.
Right.
And so this is where I sort of bump up against like. I have a problem with the defund the police message, because it's like, okay, the police are effed up, we could totally abandon that and get rid of the police, but then something needs to...
I don't know if anybody's even taking that seriously. I mean, even in the statement, defund the police, as I've been hearing about it, we're not saying, they're not saying...
I think you're right.
There's no, you know, get rid of the police force, but like you were saying earlier, well, there's, you know, whatever millions of police encounters a year. What we're saying is... Why is it that we are 6% or 10% or 12% of the United States population, but have a 50 or 60 or 70% share of police encounters?
And then I read this other statistic too, that for police encounters, black people are like 17% more likely to get handcuffs put on them. And like, what the heck explains that?
And arrested.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, so if we're not going to totally scrap the police, then we need to transform the police, and then an obvious way to do that is training, and training costs money.
Yeah.
So it's like,
but it's also, and training, you were talking earlier about when they get called into a situation, it's like their training is in conflict with itself. It's like when you train officers to be police officers, and then train them in like mental health, crisis intervention, those two things are in conflict in their interactions with the public, because they're police officers first, you know, and the police officer's job is to defend, I suppose, his life and the lives of others. And so their training says to defend, they kill, you know, and then they have this other aspect of de-escalation where they enter into a mental health crisis with somebody with a weapon, and it's like they have, and they don't necessarily even have to have a weapon, because police consider mental illness and somebody in a mental outbreak as being potentially dangerous.
The judgment has to be so quick, though,
and that's why there's that conflict, because the police training takes over first.
I hear some like kind of arguments or analyses of police encounters, and people are talking about like the decisions which should have been made, but the time spans people are talking about are seconds.
Seconds.
And
Seconds. Yeah.
you cannot think in seconds. Like
No, your body doesn't catch up.
Yeah.
Or your mind doesn't catch up to your amygdala.
Yeah, like the big one recently was the guy who he was like drunk in a Wendy's parking lot, and they called the police on him. Police came out. He resisted arrest. He grabbed the police guy's taser and sort of fired the taser back at him, and the police shot him.
Yeah.
And that was like a real big deal. But that was one of those ones where it's like, okay, that's seconds. And
I would have, in that instance, when that man turned and pointed a weapon and actually used that weapon at the police, I am in support of the police defending themselves.
yeah, I feel like though that like I didn't know like.
Again, you know, my people who I associate with are very interested in neuroplasty, and you know, this whole thing with the amygdala taking over.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it just takes over. It just takes over.
That mechanism in your brain that keeps you alive in situations where you have to react rather than think, and things
And when
just
you're
happen.
not thinking, the
have to happen
amygdala takes
quickly.
over. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why, like government, when they want to persuade people to do something stupid, like go into a war, they frame it as an existential crisis to try to trigger that mechanism in your brain to approve what they want to do, even when it's totally.
Yeah, I mean,
Terrible.
I feel that with, you know, my stance with the police force. It's like, now personally, I have never been assaulted by the police. Every time I was arrested, I deserved it, right? Trust me.
Yeah, I mean, I've only had like
But
one
they've
encounter
never
with them, and it was
beaten me.
like, yeah,
But I didn't invite being beaten
no.
either.
Yeah, so I feel like there is this thing where people like do not know how to react when they have a police encounter. Like there's this like knowledge that's missing from people. People think, some people, but I think it's a lot of people, where when a police officer tells you to do something or wants to take you into arrest, that's a command. So you do not have the option of refusing that. Your options come in later, like after they take you to the station and you contact your lawyer.
Right.
But it seems like there's a lot of people that don't know
Miss
that.
Yeah.
And then one thing I worry about is that the big numbers of this thing are hard to understand proportionally. So an understanding of like all police being like murderers, say like if that was your understanding, or I'm saying like your as in like a person. If a person adopted that understanding of the police, that would certainly influence how they interact with the police if they have a police encounter where they get pulled over or they get stopped by the police in some way. And then does that it almost seems like there could be like a feedback mechanism there where that like that belief or that understanding of what the police are may like in fact validate that belief by the reinforcement that would cause
confirmation bias.
Yeah. So it's like this big old messy thing, but like
especially now that everything is socialized in the media, social media. I mean, so everything is out there and exposed. Well, I stopped watching TV because I was having interactions with other people in America, and their only frame of reference for me would be like some TV show or some news thing, you know. And it does annoy the crap out of me that I can't be met, you know, as an individual and found out for who I am as that individual instead of being framed by something that you see in the media.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy.
And there is some of that framing because that must be there because of the statistics about differences in the outcomes of the encounters dependent on race. It's like that correlation, there's some explanation there or some problem.
You are definitely a scientist.
Yeah.
You are definitely an engineer. Yeah, no, I got you. I'm just asking to be seen as an individual. I mean, first,
Yeah.
not second or lastly, but first. I want to be, I want the moment of introduction before opinion or conclusion.
It just seems like it seems likely that there are pre-existing biases that the police have that they're taking into encounters, which are causing this difference, this correlation between race and outcomes and police encounters.
Yeah, but that's true. But there's a lot being left out in that statement, like cultural aspects, and
I'm trying to
I know
fence in
it's
this complicated
difficult.
thing, and it's
difficult.
hard.
Yeah, and in in the mindful practice that I associate with, it's like it's language that becomes the big problem. I mean, we see things through whatever filters, but the filters,
And language is an evolving thing. I see it evolve here.
Yeah.
Like a big example of this I've seen is the word protester. So what I've observed is that people hear the word protester implies peaceful, and then when someone wants to determine whether someone is peaceful or not, they try to figure out whether they're a protester or not.
Right.
So in the police station incident here yesterday, there was like a black women's speaking circle, and they were exchanging ideas and like telling stories and all that good stuff. And then these guys that looked like security just randomly started trying to break into the police station. And no one knew whether they were protesters or not.
Right.
So it became this like long, complicated, messy
They
process.
stopped them though, right?
Eventually, yeah, but it took like an hour and a half because eventually people decided, oh, okay, these guys are not protesters. They're not part of our group. They're not acting according to the will of the group. But the fact that they just did this action immediately and like it just got so confused and like multiple people tried to stand up and be leaders and communicate and get everyone on the same page, but it was like not working out for most people.
Yeah.
Turns out there's this guy, I talked to him, I forget if that was earlier today or yesterday. He introduced himself, he said, I'm 54 years young, so calling him the 54 years young man. But he was able to talk to everyone. And it seemed like when there's nothing to go on but like superficial qualities, like everyone's in the situation, no one knows anyone, and the crowd is trying to decide what to do, it seems like the things people were favoring were, and this is just my observation, is first favoring the race. It seemed like people were more receptive to hearing from an Indian or a black person, and secondarily, people were more interested in hearing from older people, like first. Those were the two criteria.
Which is odd because young people are so prejudiced against older until
shit goes down.
Yeah.
until it's like, okay,
until dad needs it or mom's need it.
Yeah, we need someone with some experience because this situation's totally effed up and I'm scared.
Yeah.
Then it's like a reversion to that type of parent-child relationship.
Well, I was talking to a woman yesterday, and I have these questions that I've been asking, and she said, it's not my job to teach, and that stuck with me.
What's that? What does she mean by that?
Well, like when you are working with an oppressed people, you don't go to that oppressed people and say, teach me your issues. It's your responsibility to, especially if you're an oppressor, it's your responsibility to take a look at your stuff and then come in solution oriented instead of teach me how to fix this situation that I caused.
That's weird. There's two types of oppressors, right? There's an oppressor who's benefiting and is okay with it, and there's an oppressor who's benefiting and not okay with it. Is that a fair way to break apart oppressors into two groups that doesn't lose anything?
I don't know. Yeah, I think probably, but the way I see it is only the people who benefit in some way, and it could be a tiny, tiny way, but only people who benefit from a status quo will accept that status quo. I mean, it might not be the best situation for you, but if you got some benefit in it, then you know, especially a benefit over other people in that status quo.
I know
have,
precisely what you're saying.
Yeah.
So like a good example of this is I would suspect that people who have been arguing for abolishment of private property don't really own much private property, for example.
or have been locked out of ownership of private property. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when Kasama was here, the councilwoman, she's advocating that.
Uh-huh.
And then people are giving speeches. It seemed like that resonates with people a lot, and then following that, the speech circles, people are talking about those ideas and abolishment of private property.
But
and
is
stuff.
that real?
I feel like that this is like a, there's a, I don't know if I'm trying to think of an analogy. I'm thinking of one, I'm not sure if it's a very good analogy, but there's a type of fish called a remora, which is like one of those fish which swims alongside a bigger fish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that issue is like a remora issue or something. Like there's a big primary issue for sure, and everyone agrees on what that is. But there's other like things coming along with that, and I mean that's fine. It's like, but it's this big old constellation of things.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of times it feels like it's just unrealistic. The conversation is just unrealistic.
Yeah, like I hear a goal.
Abolish private property ownership.
Yeah, that's
in
a big,
America.
that's
Come
a
on.
big goal. But where are the incremental steps which get us there?
I mean, the only place that I've seen an abolishment of private ownership given back to the people are examples in Africa, where a black government will take over an area and take land that had been in European or Afrikaner hands for sometimes a couple hundred years, and take it and give it back to them.
A couple hundred years is a weird time range because that's the range of multiple lifetimes.
Oh, I know, but they have wine vineyards in South Africa planted by the Dutch 500, 700 years ago and manned by those families for all that time.
Huh.
And I wouldn't have known that if what's the giant books, Alaska, Hawaii. I read the Covenant in hardcover, and the Covenant is in hardcover is 800 and 900 hardbound books.
Yeah, I have not read that.
And I had the time at the time, but you know, it gave me a history of Dutch South Africa that I didn't know. I mean, if I had a vineyard in my family for 500 years, I would be claiming that land as mine. And you know, I mean, and so it made me understand. But they also claim themselves as, you know, the lost tribes of Israel. So
But this is part of like the bigger, or I think like the general big topic of this type of thing is colonization or colonialization or one of those wordization words.
right.
But I mean, that's a thing, and that happens. I think it became most recently most obvious when they divided the world after World War II.
Oh yeah. And they're still fighting that shit in almost every continent. I mean, that's what the whole thing with Crimea and India is about. That's what the whole thing with Rwanda and the Tutsis were about. That's what.
Yeah, the Tutsi thing was weird because that was strictly on a racial divide, which seems most relevant to what's going on
But
here.
that racial divide was giving a minority a majority over, you know, a people, and then abandoning that minority to that majority, and the majority taking its vengeance. That's what happened.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I'm not like super religious, but I feel like Jesus told us how to do this thing. That's like the golden rule, right? Do unto others,
Yeah.
and then let's just,
That's my
but it's complicated,
That's
right?
my rule. It's like, I will treat you how you treat me.
Yeah.
You know.
It's like a symmetry to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, what's this other thing? It's like John Rawls' theory of justice, which is it's a thought experiment. If you're building a just society, one way of thinking about that is you can construct a society without knowing your place in it. So it's like, you have to, these guys are going to be garbage men, but you might be a garbage man, so make sure that job is okay. That kind of deal. Garbage men.
Make sure that job is okay.
Or, so it's about like, you're tasked with building a society and dividing who does what without you knowing what role you will be placed in, but you will be placed in a role of your own creating. You just don't know which one. And so that's sort of like the thought experiment. It's the theory of justice to make a just society.
I hadn't heard that. Okay.
You can do it that way.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, interesting. I'll have to follow up on that.
I feel like getting back to the present situation, not a simple solution to this, but certainly people know the institution, specifically the police institution, is directing energy at addressing this, but I'm worried about protester energy not being directed in effective ways due to misunderstanding proportionality because of inability to evaluate like large numbers delivered by the media.
Yeah,
It's like 10 million and then something screwed up happens and you see an evocative video on YouTube. It's like, wow.
No, I got you. I like your questions, and it's like in a lot of ways I am right there with you, but so we're seeing it similarly actually, and I think that's why at this point is when we need to bring in the other voices, because we're seeing it similarly, which means that we would probably ultimately come up with similar solutions, but would those solutions be best for the people, and where are those smaller voices, and most importantly, where are the voices of the women, because they will come up with a solution that we won't think about.
Yeah, the 54-year young man who saved the day yesterday, and the reason why the CHOP still exists is the police station was not broken into because of him.
Yeah.
He was making the statement that we are an example and we need to think like that, and he just listed off all these names of all these cities, because it's a non-local event which catalyzed this whole situation. It was not a crime committed by the
Seattle
police here,
Police Department,
but we are taking that. But it's like there is a uniformity with policing, though, and that gets back to the whole systemic thing. But I'm not hearing very specific. I'm not hearing people specifically establish like, well, okay, no, it is pretty specific though, because it's like it's about the outcomes in the police encounters being highly correlated with race in certain ways. That is specific, and that is systemic.
I'm glad that the police force here feels under fire for something that happened somewhere else, because that's how we feel. That's how I feel as an African American. It's like when some dumbass pulls some dumb shit in some other place, and I get looked at suspiciously because of it. Yeah. That's all fucked up. So when that happens with the police, they should be. I mean, I've always felt that way, so why shouldn't they?
The problem of understanding information in proportionality is not restricted to non-police. That's everyone. So like the police can have the same like kind of disproportionate. It's hard to evaluate such large numbers. But
But it's good that the conversation is happening.
Yeah. But there are statistics, and statistics are providing a simple understanding of large numbers, and they do indicate that there's this totally messed up correlation of race and outcomes of police encounters. So it's like something's wrong.
You're saying that's something that you just figured out? I mean, or you just started coming to believe that, or?
I mean, I didn't know.
It's been said pretty much constantly for my lifetime.
Yeah, I've been super insular though.
Yeah.
Which that's also a weird thing.
I'm not mad at people for having their, for growing up in certain protective, situations.
I'm learning it quick.
Yeah. That describes the Buddha. I mean, the Buddha was completely insulated from suffering, and he chose, for reasons that are his and ours, I suppose, he chose to look suffering in the face instead of being insulated, and I think that's a responsibility that we have. Once you become aware, you're responsible.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I'm not mad at people for being insulated. I'm not even mad at people for having privilege. It was like a conversation I was having yesterday about Jewish people. It's like, why wouldn't they want to be identified as European? I mean, if I had an opportunity to have that privilege, I would take it. I mean, so I'm not mad at people for that. I mean, and like Patricia Hearst, I'm not mad at Patty Hearst for escaping the consequences that had she been black, she would have been, you know.
I'm not sure I know that story.
Patty Hearst was heiress to the Hearst media empire.
Oh, okay.
And she got wrapped up as a student in college with the Symbionese Liberation Army. And they ended up robbing banks, and there was a lot of...
Oh, okay. I heard about that.
Yeah,
Patty Hearst.
It would have
the,
happened right
bank
about
robber.
the time... how old are you? About
I'm
30?
37.
Yeah, so right about the time you would have been born... You were born... Wait, 37, that would have made you...
82.
82, yeah, so about 7 years after you were born. Yeah. But it was an interesting situation because essentially she did some jail time, but for bank robbery and felony murder, she did no jail time.
Huh.
But we're not mad at her, at least those of us who are.
That's privilege. Her family having tons of money and
Her
influence,
family
keeping
was,
her out
yeah,
of trouble.
yeah. But
Even
she
though she
didn't
did some really dumb shit.
She didn't choose to be born to that family, and what she did choose was to try to be like more human and with the people, and she just fell in with a group of people who were particularly violent.
Yeah, college is where people pick up
yeah.
ideas. That's where people's brains are like vacuum
Right.
sucking in everything
Yeah.
in an undiscriminating fashion.
Right. So I'm not mad at her. I'm not mad at her at all. In fact, I'd love to have a conversation with her. But she still lives on the Hearst estate, and from everything I heard, she's pretty much a normal person. But she doesn't do interviews, and she doesn't. It's not something that I'm sure she's proud of, and so she doesn't talk about it. But you know, we're not mad at her for it, not at all.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, if someone does a terrible thing and you understand their situation, which led to them doing that, it's almost sad. It's not really like.
Well, she was manipulated in a lot of ways, and she was manipulated in multiple fronts by her family and their privilege, you know, and wanting to be human, and manipulated by people who were violent and, you know, wanted to, I guess, overthrow the government, and probably guilt and shamed her in a lot of ways because there was a lot of ammunition to use against a young person with a mind that could be influenced. I mean, the Hearst Empire coming out of the 1800s into the 20th century, I mean, they had power, man. I mean, they could make or break industries. You know, they were a big time force. So I don't know. It's all very interesting, and I'm glad it's being talked about. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm just being open to. I'm living this experience. I don't know if I told you, but I haven't been on the internet in 6 weeks. I've been
Man,
not hooked to.
I don't know if I could
media.
survive.
In fact, you can. It will be excruciating. It's a lot like a heroin withdrawal, but you know you can make it.
How do I not have access to information of the world immediately at my fingertips? How do I give that up for 6 weeks?
It made me crazy. Well, it made me crazy to be that connected. I mean, like with Facebook. Facebook causes trauma, right? And Facebook causes like a lot of little traumas over a long period of time, and they come in rapid succession. And if you can't stop and deal with any one trauma, all you're doing is piling trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And that resonates with me because that's pretty much, you know, what's been going on in our society. And that's why I'm fundamentally, I'm opposed to Facebook because it doesn't allow for healing. You know, it allows for violence and it allows for.
It's continuous and it's manipulative.
Yeah, that was the thing that pissed me off too. I did not appreciate Facebook's conduct during the last election cycle.
Oh yeah.
I thought I am so offended to have thought manipulated. That offends me to no
on a
end.
massive scale.
Yeah, that
everyone
offended
is
me,
on
and
there.
I haven't been using it since. I mean, I maintain my Facebook account so my son knows where I'm at. That's the only reason I do.
Their business model, like, is the people who use Facebook are the product, they're not the customer.
Yeah.
And so they're being sold to politicians for a lot of money, and politicians have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Dollars win elections.
Yeah. And growing up, opinion had no value. I would like to congratulate the young generation of giving value to opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, people didn't give a, I mean, your opinion, you had a right to your opinion, but your opinion has no right to me. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where shit is.
And I strongly believe that you do not have to respect people's opinions, and it's for their benefit if you
don't.
If you explain why you don't respect their opinions. And I see a lot of that going on here, which is nice.
Yeah, finally, because that's the part that took away a little hope for me. I was like, oh man, you guys are screwed, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have to be, you know, if my American citizenship can be put up for debate.
Yeah.
That would suck. I'm a labor union guy, so I'm a union socialist, and you know, we built this country, and this is my country, and I will not question. You know, it was like, it's just amazing to me what's going on. But you know, that's evolution.
Yeah.
Get rid of or get left behind.
That's a different experience than me. I'm like a tech mercenary.
Yeah.
So I change jobs every few years because the company explodes or because there's like a better opportunity, and it's like,
yeah.
I don't know if I like that, but it seems to be what is.
I drink or die.
Yeah, it's all very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can survive without tech.
I don't know.
I mean, you know,
I don't know.
I mean, you probably need it for the respirator, but outside of that, you're all right.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice talking to you.
Yeah, it's super good talking to you. That's why the chop is awesome, because I learned a lot. I encountered a really smart dude. Like, yeah, that guy was older than me, and I could tell he had applied his time to learning. So it was like, that was a real, I don't know if I use the word treat. It felt like a treat talking to that guy. Oh, it must be late. I'm not sure precisely what time it is. Oh, like, I don't know, 10 or 11? I feel like things are getting back to normal here. As strange as that sounds. It's, some violent bullshit went on the last 2 days. No more bullshit. Yeah, this feels like normal again. Like, I see just like everyone standing around just like talking, just like I was doing. Like some new stuff going on over here. Oh. Oh, that smoker smells so good. I need enough today. Oh, it smells so good. Oh. I just want to video your smoker a little bit.
Yeah, man, it could be less. I'm not cooking this. I'm watching for another guy. At least that.
Smells so good.
It does.
So good.
It's torture. Guys, smoking. Oh wow! Hey, the art I was looking at earlier today. Alright, check out this right here. So this was the thing I just filmed earlier today. The artist was working on it when I was filming it. Just said love there earlier. Look at that. I think that's a thumbnail right there. Good shot of that. There's some music going on over here. A bunch of people out on the field too. Frisbee going on out there. I'm pretty sure that Rancho, what's this place called? Rancho something Tacos. I'm pretty sure they're killing it in terms of like business.
Yeah?
Let's see what I got.
Thank you very much.
This is like definitely not like
those
a.
are the metal, those are the metal, this is all. They call me a research. I guess a research. It's a metal. So everything is the metal. My drumstick is the metal. You know, everything is metal.
That's pretty cool.
And then they like to they don't like to touch each other. Actually, they sound better if they don't touch each other.
Hey, that's super cool. I've never seen anything like this before. That's super unique.
I guess they call me research. I'm looking for the sound. Looking for the sound. I'm still searching for the sound of this thing.
Cool. Thanks, man. Oh. No photos. Yeah, they want no photos of the memorial over there, so I'll not photo. That's flashy. I think I'm gonna call it a night. Yeah. That's cool, using the to my right is the memorial to the guy who got murdered on the field last night. Seemed like there was a ton of people around there today, and some people were just like beyond upset.
Was there a bunch of people over there on the other side where the fence is? A bunch of black people? Or are they blind? I know.
I mean, there's a bunch of black people around here in general.
No, I'm just talking about standing right here across the corner.
Oh, no, there's like only a couple people there, yeah. At the memorial, yeah. But it seemed like that focused everyone, and some of that focus was not from people who you want focusing on you there. There was a bunch of incidents, and
so I'm thinking this guy's got to leave with a bunch of dough. Bro, he didn't leave with hardly any money, dog. All that.
Feels like it's, I mean, getting back to quotes normal. It felt like it was really constructive up through part of Juneteenth, and then there was some attention that just caused problems. And now it feels like it's back to just constructive communication and peaceful protesting, and as 54 years young man would say, I forget how he'd say it. It's like, stop the bullshit or something like that. I'm glad that guy's around. All right, well, that's it for me for tonight. It's like tons of people out right now. Everything's open. It's starting to feel normal.